Welcome back to the XC Tech Garage. Starting to do some more modifications on the 2021 890 Adventure R. So we've done, got a little bit of work done on some new mirrors from Rottweiler. We got those purchased. Those have been really nice on the first ride. Got a new license plate piece. We've got a new stand foot for soft ground. Today, actually, we're going to be working on installing a new skid plate. So the factory skid plate, which is still on the bike, and we'll be taking that off here momentarily, is probably good enough for the street. But if you're going to ride anywhere off-road and hit anything, we'll show you in the video. It's kind of a tin can. So went ahead and ordered, did some reviews, or looked at some reviews, seen a lot of skid plates, and actually ordered this from a gentleman in the UK, in Chappel, is out there online. His skid plate, very well built. Been impressed so far. I mean, just getting it out of the box, the way it was packaged, and the weight and the thickness of the aluminum. This is actually his vapor finish for the 890. So he makes both for a 790 and an 890. This is for the 890. So really nice, and actually I've done some looking. There's a couple radiator guards that will get installed. In fact, the factory KTM Power Parts radiator has got this exact same cutouts on it like he's got here. So I've seen a lot of others. I mean, they all look pretty decent. Some better than others. I think the key with his, and maybe a few, is that the KTM is known for the foot pegs on this one can get a little out of rotation. Supposedly that's a possibility that you can break them. I don't know if I've actually seen one broken or broke the engine case, but you know, we're going to try to eliminate that. And also just frankly a stronger mounting. We'll show you the way this one's mounted from the factory. It's not bad, but again, it probably goes with the territory for the thin plate. So nice thick skid plate. It obviously is going to add a little bit of weight, but we're going to drop some other weight with some of the stuff that we're trading in and out. Again, the bike ultimately is done really well on weight, and so we anticipate, you know, again, we should stay pretty close to the same by the time we swap out the silencer and do a couple other pieces there. We'll probably be keeping somewhere around the same weight. Like I said, the nice thing is here with Ian's, he's got a really nice beef up on the bracket here. So we're going to go ahead and we've got to take the bracket off here and actually to get it installed. So we'll start with getting this installed or taking this off. Just need to, it's a T45. So he ships it with the bracket on there. So let's go on ahead and undo these bolts. So we're going to get these off here, and then he's got some other hardware that's going to go on the front. The nice thing is, I understand this reuses the factory tank mounts, or the factory tank guards, which I feel like are pretty sufficient after reading up on them, looking at what the KTM riders and stuff are using. Whether you're using the factory, the poly ones, or in some cases if you got the rally or you order the carbon fiber, which are very nice, by the way, kind of expensive for what they are, but you know, nothing in motorcycling seems to be cheap. That's how it works. So yeah, they work with the factory guards. So what we're going to do is we'll wind up pulling off the factory piece, similar to how you would do an oil change if you look in the manual. And then we're going to put this guy on, and then we'll go back and we'll reattach the factory pieces. So he does mention in his instructions that, again, even from the factory, some of the foot pegs come a little misaligned, which is rather interesting, but it does happen. And so we'll see if ours are out of line, or I'll at least make some comments if they do. Try to capture as much of this as we can. This won't be an exhaustive install, but it'll be enough that you catch hopefully the highlights, or I'll mention them in here. So like I said, first thing is we'll get this this bracket off here, see if I can keep from dropping everything on the ground. And then we're going to switch the camera and going ahead and jump down on the ground and do a little wrenching on the ground with that. So again, got the plate apart ready. That's how it comes shipped. He's got some really nice protection around it. All wrapped up nice. The box, I mean, this shipped from overseas, you know, got all the way over here fully intact. So obviously that means it was well packed, but it's also well built. So The bracket, I believe powder coated steel. Again, just really, really nice. I mean, all the welds and the finish are really good. So yeah, we'll see how this goes. So oh, sorry. One other thing, we're going ahead and, like I said, take off the factory skid plate. As such, you're going to see there's some rubber bungs that are underneath there that actually provide additional support. Those actually go into the engine case as well. And supposedly on some big hits, I've heard of people that have cracked those or broke those. So we'll be removing those. This skid plate, again, it's reinforced back at the foot peg, right where the center stand and everything mounts, and then also at the factory front mount. So a much stronger mounting scheme. So stay tuned as we continue on here with the build. So our first step in getting the factory skid plate off, in fact, we're going to go ahead and leave these side guards on, or the engine guards. You can actually take out the factory mounting bolts. There are 4 here, and then we've got several that are underneath as well that we'll do here momentarily. Those bolts will allow us to take this entire assembly and drop that down. So we'll go ahead and get these bolts out. Just for those watching in, this is a T30. I believe you can also use a 10 millimeter, whatever you decide to do. I like to use the Torx where they're available. Obviously, if you got these bolts all dirtied up, sometimes that hex is a little more handy. So going ahead and loosen these off here. Folks watching in, everybody always asks why I don't use why I don't use power tools. The nice rainy afternoons tweaking in the garage, something to be said, a little bit therapeutic, if you will, using hand tools. I use my impacts and others plenty. Sometimes working on the bikes, just like to keep it a little bit simple. So we've got those 4 removed. We'll move underneath and get the next set. So these next few bolts underneath on the factory skid plate, you can see those underneath here. We're going ahead and get those pulled out. Same Torx again, or you can use, going ahead and use a regular socket, your choice. They'll come out pretty easy. You can see here already kind of how thin the factory skid plate is. So be glad to get this guy off and get something more substantial. So when you take these last couple bolts out, you might be careful because this shroud is going to potentially drop down. What's holding it right now? There's some little rubber pieces up here in the skids. In these tank guards. So these tank guards right here, you'll see up inside here, there's actually some pieces that are holding those in. So looks like we've got it loose. We're going ahead and change the camera angle so you can see it come down. So now that we've got all of our bolts out, we're going to go the entire assembly. You can see here the entire skid assembly and the tank guards are actually all loose. So what we're going to do is there's actually some little rubber up inside here, these little pieces right here, right there. And on the other side, there's actually some rubber buns that actually hold this up in here. So I like to drop this all. This is if you were going to do an oil change, this is a way that you can do this as well. But we're going ahead and drop this entire thing out. And then we'll start some further disassembly prior to installation of our new skid plate. If you were going to do an oil change, you'd be ready to start on that. So, also should be mindful. Right here is a little vent hose. Need to make sure you pop your vent hose out here. There we go. And with that, you're also going to see this rubber bracket that actually went underneath. This was a bump piece that actually held onto the factory skid plate. So that one will come out as well. So we'll go on ahead and slide this guy out, and then I'll take you underneath and show you the rest. So next up, what you'll see here is where the factory rubber plate and stuff mounts. There's actually some some bump rubbers that are underneath here. So what we're going to want to do is get those off here. I've actually already taken one off to show you what it looks like. So got the little piece here. We'll let the camera focus in, hopefully. Get the camera in focus. Get it right there. There we go. So this is actually rubber, and then it's got a thread, and you can see it's got Loctite on top of it. So you'll have to use a little pair of channel locks. So I got my my Nipex here, and you have to grab near the bottom of this thing. So you want to grab right here as best you can, right up against the piece. Otherwise, you're going to twist the rubbers off. So obviously, you want to be able to save these if you ever want to be able to put the factory piece on. If not, I guess you can be a little rough with them, but you'll see they've got an insert inside of here. So I've got that one loose. We'll do the same thing here. So we'll get that broke loose. And you can just take those out, and we're not going to reuse those. I will say when I do my next oil change, I'll probably go on ahead and figure out what size bolts these are, and probably get me a couple little plastic ones to put inside there, or a little bit, some plugs or some inserts. So I got a little bit of chain lube here. Yeah, we'll do a little bit of plastic insert or something. I like to do that just to plug up the factory holes. That way I don't get anything in there, so easy enough to get some little nylon plugs or some little ABS plugs. So now we should be ready to start the next installation of the Ian Chappel skid plate. So I'll probably just show a couple videos to show you the kind of the comparisons of the two skid plates before we put them on. But we've got ourselves pretty prepped, and what we're going to do, there will be some additional bolts that we need to loosen on the foot peg, and I'll go on ahead and get those noted here as well. So we've got the factory skid plate off, and now actually just thought I'd do a little check because I hadn't seen this online. I see I think the noted measurements, but I don't know if anybody's ever measured the factory skid. So this is the factory skid plate, pretty thin. I would say if I pushed on this a little bit, it would bend. I mean, you do have some brackets underneath that are supposed to support it. It's got a couple spots where it touches on the engine cases. You know, again, engine cases are strong, but frankly, I don't know if I want all the bashing to transfer in the bottom of my engine case. It's pretty hard to replace. So just thought I'd actually check and see what the difference is here. So I've got my handy dandy calipers out, and we'll go on ahead and get ourselves on here. By the way, we will use millimeters, even here in the US. So let's see here. So the factory skid. Let's get a good, little over 2 millimeter. See if we can, right at 2 millimeters. So yeah, it looks like maybe these, if this is, I don't know if this is a hydroformed, I'm going to guess maybe hydroform piece that they use. So it's pretty thin, I wouldn't call it a tin can, but yeah, we're about 2.1, 2.15, yeah, about 2.15 millimeter. Not very thick at all. See if I can find another little spot here. So I'll get you guys a, wow. Yeah, I think maybe it's hydroform because you get a little, yeah, it's probably hard to see there, but we're just under 2 millimeters. So, yeah, so pretty thin. I believe Ian says this guy is like 5. So I think that's right. Let's see. Definitely got to open the calipers up. Yeah, 5 millimeter. So we're, oh man, over twice as thick. maybe a little thicker. So again, really, I mean, definitely more substantial. I wouldn't say it's, you know, it's overly heavy, but for what it's intended to do with the mounts, definitely a thicker piece. So we're going to go on ahead and continue on getting the installation done. So next we'll be doing some loosening of some of our pieces, or some of the foot peg pieces to be able to get our mount in there. You'll definitely want to look at the instructions, because if you go and try to fit this thing on here and start fitting your plate and it doesn't fit, he's been very explicit. This thing is dimensionally correct. Everything is dimensionally correct, and I would say based on the fabrication, I agree with it, knowing that I've seen over and over again that these pegs can get out of alignment. So make sure you download the instructions that comes along with the purchase. When I purchased it and got my invoice and everything, he had links to all his instructions. Hopefully this video will, maybe he's got another one, or one of the guys has got one out there. Hopefully this one will help you as well. So we'll go on ahead, we're going to get the bracket mounted up next. We're going to check our alignment, see how we go from there. So next up, we're going to go on ahead and loosen and remove our skid plate, or our center stand mounts, and the bushings are right here. And then we've got this hole as well. So we've got to actually loosen up this whole assembly in order to be able to drop it down. So we're going to see how this goes. So hopefully we can get this loosened up. So this is a T45. So we're going to loosen this first one. She's loose now. And then it says to take out number 2. We're going to take out number 2. And then we should have this bushing trapped in here. So we've got that little bushing that comes out. Go on ahead and just make sure we got enough feels like that's loose. Now we'll see here on the alignment, we may have to undo these up here. Go ahead and get the camera up here just a little bit. So these bolts may have to if this whole peg assembly has been rotated one way or the other. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on, but for now we're going to see if they're in a line, so we'll go over to the other side and get that one as well. So we'll get these next two. Again, going to undo the front one here, or loosen it, and then we're going to take out number 2 and remove the bushing that's underneath. Probably don't need my extension on there. So there's our next bushing out. Again, those are if you're going to put in the factory center stand. So we've got this bolt loose as well. I believe that'll give us room to get the next piece, our bracket, installed. So the next thing we're going to install here is actually the bracket that comes along with the kit. So I've gone ahead and pre-installed it, but it actually goes in between those 2 bolts that we just took out. So you're going to go ahead and slide that up inside there. Should fit in there nice and snug. The fingers are going to point forward, so the front of the bike is facing that way. So the fingers are pointing that way. So the front of our bike. The other thing to be notable of is this exhaust hanger that's right here. The nut that's on the side of it and the bolt. You want to make sure sometimes this is rotated around here instead of up here near the peg. And so that bolt and clamp assembly can interfere with this bracket. So on mine, it was perfectly fine. It's actually right where it should be. Yeah, just be mindful of that. We're going ahead and now we're going to reinstall the original bolts from the factory. So we'll put back in these and we're going to reinstall a little bit of Loctite 243 on them. Oh, just a reminder, do not tighten these quite yet. So you just want to get a little bit of Loctite on them, get them started in there so that you've got the bracket centered up. By the way, this is where you're going to start noticing if you start to have some alignment issues. That's going to show up here in this next step. We're just going to put those in by hand. Go to the other side. A little bit of Loctite on each one. We're using 243. And these should start in there easily. If they don't force anything. Need to check the alignment here. There we go. There we go. We're going to go on to the next step. So next up, we're actually going to install the Ian Chappel skid plate using the 4 Torx metric screws that were included. While you're here, before you start installation, so we're going to reuse the original factory floor mounting points. Go ahead and check, make sure the clips for your fuel line and others are fastened up there. Always good to check that out and make sure everything's where it should be. This is the fuel line between the two tanks, so you just set the skid up there, and then we've got line up our 4 holes. We'll go ahead and get these started in. Also, it looks like I've seen the fuel line clips have a tendency to get a little loose. So I'm going to take this off and make sure before I put this back up here that we're all good to go. Yep. There we go. Like I said, check those before you start. Definitely don't want to have that coming down and rubbing on anything. It does have some abrasion shield on it, but it's a good one to keep an eye on. Just remember that every time you change your oil too. Keep a close eye on that. So we'll just go ahead and start these here. Might be helpful if I had a helper. And again, I believe you don't want to tighten these too tight. I think you just want to get them up there a little bit. Check this one here, make sure he's going in straight. Take your time. This is also why I don't use power tools sometimes. So I want to know that I'm good and started in there. You want to go ahead and check that one. Should be good to go. We'll check that one, get everything aligned, and then move to the next step. So next up here, we're going to go on ahead and do the left arm pivot bolt. Did verify that it looks like I don't perfectly line up underneath, so I've got a little bit of misalignment here underneath the bracket, so I've been following the steps that are there. So the suggestion is you take and undo this guy, and we're going to tap and rotate this bracket up. So we're going to undo the pivot, and then we're going to actually pivot this entire assembly up. So we'll get our 19 millimeter and get that done. So this guy's torqued on there pretty tight, so be ready for that. We've got our left peg assembly. We got to get lined up here. That should allow our brackets to fit in here. There we go. Go on ahead and put the rest of these in. Mine was definitely out of alignment a little bit, but it looks like we got it all started in there. Just as the instructions say, no need to force anything. Everything started by hand, just as it should. These are just in there by hand, getting everything, just running everything up loosely. And we still do have the front mounts loose as well. The side, all these mounts are all loose. Right now we're just getting the final pieces in. So we'll move on to the next step. Well, continuing on with the next steps here in the Chappel skid plate, we are going to reuse the factory tank guards. So we'll have to take those apart. It's the same setup we've been using earlier. We're using our T30. Going ahead and take the side shields off. Now he's gone ahead, and in his skid plate it's actually tapped. So in one of these holes on the factory you'll find a nut. We will not need to reuse that nut. So also, don't remove the factory bumpers. So these factory bumpers that are right here, you don't want to remove those. So those will go on just as they are. And you will reuse the factory hardware. Like I said, you won't have to. There's our right side. You won't have to reinstall the nut. So also remember, when you're installing the right side, remember there's the hose that's got to go there. So you got to make sure you reinstall that hose. So set that down. Get our next one out here. Go ahead and set our hardware down. Same thing on this side. So yeah, he has actually threaded all the holes on his skid plate. So earlier we did have a couple spots that we didn't cover extensively. I mentioned about torquing. I went ahead and retorqued all the factory bolts rather than stating them here, and at the risk of getting one of them wrong and out of order, I'd encourage you always to use your factory manual. He also has that in his instructions, which I appreciate, but I'm always one of those, I know the manufacturers will occasionally change. It's nice to have the online manual. I know some may hate that. I like to have the electronic because I can grab it about anywhere I go. If I need to print it out, I can print a copy. So there's what's left of the factory skid. Again, pretty thin and flimsy. I mean, looks good, don't get me wrong. They did a good job making it look like a nice piece. Leave it to KTM, they always do pretty good on the design. So yeah, Ian on his has actually got, his are, because it's a much thicker plate, he actually has these threaded instead of these nut zerts. So we'll see how well that does, I'll be honest. Should those get stripped out, I guess with his plate, there's actually room that you could put nuts in. I believe you can put nut zerts in there if you ever had to. So, you know, really, really long service life. But if you take your time, put the bolts in right, won't have that problem. So we're going to go ahead and get the next set of hardware done here. So welcome back. This is the final piece where we're putting on the side pods, or the tank protectors, as they say. So really a robust tank, but these help provide an additional layer of protection. Just a couple things. Reminder, we're going to be reusing the factory hardware. In the back, it is tapped now, so he's got a nice tapped hole. Actually, all these holes are tapped. So all three bolts, the factory bolts, will be reused. Be mindful, you've got to reattach this air hose here. So we've got an air hose, the one that's marked there. Make sure you get the right one. while you're in here, go on ahead and make sure all your fuel lines and everything else are all good to go and up out of the way. So it looks like everything's good. So, and this rubber bung, those, we never had to replace those. When we have to take this skid plate off, we can actually take this skid plate off all as one piece. So once we put in these 3 bolts, the next time we take this apart, we'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll have the balance of the bolts that are underneath on the back that go to the bracket. So, and then we can drop this entire assembly just like we did the factory. So I would suggest, since this is something that's going to be, again, semi-permanent unless you damage it, welcome to Blue Loctite, semi-permanent. So I'm going to go ahead and put just a little bit of Loctite on the bolts as I put those in. I would encourage you to take your time and do these by hand. Again, it is, they are threaded aluminum, so it could be easy to strip. You want to make sure you don't get in a hurry. So I'd go ahead and just probably start them all by hand. Nice little line of Blue Loctite. There we go. Boy, those fit nice. Ian, I got to give you credit. I've put on a lot of aftermarket parts, and especially when it's got this many bolt holes and adaptions. Normally, you're going to have kind of a mess on your hands with getting this, get everything aligned. If you follow the instructions, which are very, very thorough, follow the online tutorials, or follow the online information. Yeah, wow, right up. It's always, that's the other reason I like to do stuff by hand. I'll be frank, it's not as fast, but you know, when I'm taking stuff off is when I'll use power tools sometimes. When I'm putting it on, I like to do it by hand. That way I know I'm not stripped. You know, nothing's gone awry. Also, when I'm putting it back on by hand, it's a great rating for me. This lets me get a chance to see how well stuff really, really fits. Again, anything can kind of be rammed and crammed on there, but you know, it definitely goes to show craftsmanship when you can get everything together. So I think there's probably a torque on these from the factory, because these are done a little bit different. You know, I'm going to use a little. We'll do the German just good and snugging. You know, if you want to go good and tighten, it's really up to you. After running a lot of stuff over the years, I know what I feel comfortable with. I always love when people tell me they can feel torques. I always tell them they're wrong. We've proven that too many times as an engineer. I've taken stuff that folks torqued. Again, on these are just snug. It'll be something that I check regularly anyways. I like to check the bolts before I go ride, especially if I'm going on an extended trip, Trans-America Trail and others. I like to make sure that everything is snug. And frankly, you know, when we're out on the trail, when I stop and we take off for the next day, call me the weird one who's out there just carefully going over some of the key pieces and parts. I really don't want anything falling off. So we're going to go ahead and swap to the other side. It's exactly the same. This side is probably the hardest if there is one, because you got to remember to put that air hose on. So just the same as the passenger side or the right side, this left side is going to go on. We've got the rubber that locks up inside the tank. We've got the 3 bolts. Again, on the back, we're threaded now. So there's a threaded hole here. Don't have to reuse the factory nut that's on the back side. So make sure we're up there good and snug. Everything fits well. As we did on the other side, I'm going ahead and put a little blue Loctite, Loctite 243. Make sure, again, we're going to be keeping these in here fairly regularly. Oh, you got to push shield all the way up. just the same as the balance of the instructions. If it doesn't fit, or it seems like it's going on too tight, stop, loosen everything up, reset what you're doing, make sure you've got your bolts and threads properly. Good part is, once this is done, never shy if these get damaged. You don't have to do this again. And I'm kind of at a weird angle, which would be good if I didn't have to do the camera. So lay down here and do it the right way. So we had the camera die, of course, right at the end. It held out. Almost all the audio did as well. So I wanted to get some final shots of the skid plate, so you can see after the install. Just kind of get a really good view of everything. I love how everything mounts up as factory and stronger than factory. One thing that I'm really impressed by is the underside of this guy. I'll show you here in just a moment. The factory one was all kinds of ridges and grooves and pieces. Area to get all kinds of stuff in and frankly get hung up. So it's nice. It's nice that this one doesn't have that problem. So yeah, I'll be excited to see how this works. I use that a lot. I'm gonna have to work on a new word. I've had lots of excited lately. Again, you can see, bolted up. Good protection for the balance of the stand and everything. So got, if you look at the angle there, great angle. Also, we mentioned before about the foot peg mount. So I love, how they did this foot peg mount. It's up in here. Everything nice and rigid. You can see here, kind of down inside there, how we got a real nice mount up. And then we'll go ahead and take a quick pass around the other side. So you can see here, same thing. Again, great protection for the header and everything else. There's actually, it's hard to tell, but you can't see it here. If you look down inside there, there's a lot of space, gap underneath to really make sure, should you hit something, even if it deflects, you're not going to have an issue. So again, same thing, nice strong mounting, using all the factory pieces, using all the aftermarket pieces, but using all the factory mounts. So now no longer mounted to the engine. I'm mounted nice and strong to the side. So yeah, frankly, Ian, fantastic job, my friend. Looking to see what's next, and I think, yeah, I know for mine what I'll have to do is I'm going to have to get that matching power part. So, I've got the factory plastic radiator guard. I think I'll probably go on ahead and update and get the power parts piece, which actually has the little hexagons like what you see here to mount up in there. So, yeah, very nice, impressive. Got her all cleaned up. Looks good, just in time to go tear it all up. So that'll be it for the XC Tech garage install of the Ian Chappel 890 skid plate. Ready to go out and put her to use and see how she does. So no more flimsy factory skid plate, and also one that's going to get caught and snagged and tear up on everything. So super thin. It's good to see something that's going to hold up along the line. So stay tuned for some post-ride reviews after we bash on this thing a little bit, and we'll see you back here in the XC Tech garage.